Good evening. I'd like to welcome everybody to the full council meeting, including members, officers, and any members of the public who may be attending remotely. Please be advised that the meeting will be live streamed and data collected during the recording of the meeting will be retained in accordance with the council's data retention policy. The recording of the meeting may be added to the council's website. The following staff are in attendance: the Chief Executive, the Monitoring Officer remotely, Director of Resources remotely, Contentious Team Leader remotely, and Democratic Services. The emergency evacuation procedure: there is no scheduled test of the fire alarm, and if the alarm does sound, please leave the building quickly using the doors signed as fire escapes, and assemble in the car park at the front of the building and await instructions. If there is anyone in attendance that might require assistance in evacuating the building, please make themselves known. Thank you. Agenda item 1, apologies for absence, and I invite the Chief Executive to give apologies.
Just before I do that, Chief Executive, the Director of Neighbourhoods and Regeneration and the Communications Manager are also in attendance.
Thank you.
Mr Mayor, I've received apologies from Councillor James Hunt, Councillor Peter MacDonald and Councillor Ken Pugh. Councillor Roger Clark and Councillor Elliot Jays are dialing in remotely and they will not be able to vote. Thank you, Mr Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Burt.
Mr Mayor, I have apologies from Councillor Simon Fowle.
Thank you. Item agenda 2, minutes. Do members approve the minutes of the council meeting held on the 23rd of February, minute numbers 611 to 629 as a correct record? All agreed? Thank you. Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Do members have any interest to declare? Thank you. Mayor's announcements. Item agenda 4. I have a lovely list of announcements, you'll be pleased to know. I attended 2 events at the Media Centre, one to mark the start of the BBC 100-year anniversary, and the second awarding prizes to local school children on behalf of Swale in Bloom for their flower bed design for a local roundabout to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee. I attended an art exhibition at Bluewater celebrating Kent artists and viewed exhibits from prisoners from Elmley and Swaleside jails who were invited to take part. We attended the International Women's Day at the Diversity House, where the Mayoress was invited to speak about women in public office and her role as Swale midwife. Sadly, we attended the sorry, I can't read my own writing here. Socially, I like that one now. We attended the Shepherd and Neame Brewery tour. That's why it was socially. That's what. You wasn't following me around, was you? I'm sure. Tour and the Faversham Brewery Ball, as well as the first Queen's Platinum Jubilee event with MS Swale. I was. Blimey, but this one was a better one still. Yeah. I was out at the launch of the Kent Wheels of Time that links Kent, all Kent museums and heritage hubs, of which Swale was the largest contributor to take part, with the most museums and heritage sites in Kent. It was an honour to be there at that one, and an excellent exhibition it was. And I did learn a lot about the rest of Kent, and we'll be touring it during the summer to see some of the other heritage sites. Thank you. Agenda item 5, leader statement. I will ask the leader to read his statement, and then I will ask the leader of the opposition to respond in the usual way. Following that, I will invite other members to respond to the leader's statement. Members invited to speak will have 3 minutes. This item has an overall time limit of 30 minutes. To ensure broad fairness, I will try to invite responses from members of the administration and opposition groups in roughly equal numbers. This may mean that I deviate from the order in which members have indicated a wish to speak. And can I please remind all members that responses must be responses to the issues raised in the leader statement. I invite Councillor Truelove to give a verbal statement. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Can you confirm that you haven't been to see Peppa Pig recently?
Yes, I can confirm that.
Okay, so whilst we have an extraordinary meeting on the 27th of April, this is the last full council meeting of the strong leader and cabinet era on this council, at least for some time. We have opted democratically to be a committee-led council, and whilst that will involve challenge and adaptability, we owe it to the council and our residents to make it work. We should be encouraged by the degree of public support for this change, including very emphatically former councillors who went through the change to the cabinet system. Who knows what crisis may yet occur, but it is clear that we, along with the whole of local government, are going to find the next period of time very hard. Local government has been underfunded for far too long, and unless this is reversed, we'll have to find radical ways to manage financially. If the government funds little more than statutory services, then the role of local government is going to be profoundly restricted. We are in danger of being a centralised state with less and less local empowerment. This is utterly the wrong direction. The COVID crisis showed exactly how able and adaptable lower tier councils are, and Swale was a sterling example. Swale has been able to expand its role over the last few years by the use of one-off funds, and I will be providing a statement on these at the final cabinet meeting on the 13th of April. But these funds are finite, and all the indications are that improvements to the borough in future may depend on successful bids for government funding, such as our levelling up bid, or how we stand with the government on their link between devolution, infrastructure and county deals. The last 3 years of this council has seen movement in several directions. The constitutional changes, the determination to tackle homelessness and rough sleeping, the enhanced links with the voluntary sector, the climate change initiatives, and the improvements to our public realm with a sense of our heritage. None of this work is completed, and I hope we will see continuity into the committee period next year and beyond. I'd like to be a little bit personal. I've had, over the last 3 years, 3 overall priorities. Firstly, to ensure this council has a sense of stability, both in its management and in its finances. We were in a difficult place at first, without a chief executive and without a very convincing structure to our senior management. Secondly, I believe there were resources available and had been for a long time that could be utilised to the benefit of our local communities. I've referred to the one-off funding earlier, which has in total enhanced our public facilities, our open spaces, our play areas, made visiting Swale a more comfortable experience, improved our town centres, and given support to others in our community that are a vital glue in our borough. And thirdly, I wanted Swale to be a kind council, providing backing to disadvantaged groups, to food banks, children's centres, and as indicated, tackling homelessness and improved resources. Along with this, for much of the first 18 months, my own personal concentration was taken up with ensuring that the spirit of Sittingbourne project that we inherited would be delivered in a way that protected council interests and delivered something valuable to our residents. I believe a decisive part of that was ending the partnership with developers and recovering land that had been offered away in the deal. So we enter a new stage, and that means a change in the way we are led. The leader will still need to represent the council to the outside world and keep an overall strategic view of the council's progress, but the level of decision making will be different. So the next year will also be a learning period for both leader and other lead members who were previously cabinet members. We cannot know the outcome of the 2023 elections, but as far as possible, it would be productive for the leader over the last 12 months to be around after those elections. Which brings me to the point. I've been a Swale councillor for 28 years. I was very doubtful about being a candidate in 2019, and I long ago decided I would not stand in 2023. I believe it will be in the best interest of this council for someone else to take up the new leadership role for the next 12 months. I will be standing down as leader, but I will continue to play a part for the next year. I will continue to lead until the meeting of the 27th of April, when council will elect a new leader. And the cabinet will continue until annual council on the 18th of May. In the cabinet and in the opposition, there are a number of people who have the talent and commitment to take Swale forward over the next few years. I think I've been enormously lucky to have had the backing of the cabinet over the last 3 years and the talent and commitment in that cabinet. Some said the coalition wouldn't last. It has, because the will has been there and because its members have shown great determination to make it succeed. And just as I've been lucky with the cabinet colleagues, I'd like to acknowledge the courteous nature of the leader of the opposition. But most of all, I want to thank the senior officers for their work and their forbearance. And if a last word, Mr. Mayor, I'd like to propose that this council donate £5,000 to the Disaster Emergency Committee to relieve the situation in Ukraine. And I don't think any of you dare say we won't do that. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Truelove. I would like to invite Councillor Horton to give a response to the statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Leader, for your words this evening. Can I start at the end and second your proposal on the donation to the Ukraine Relief Fund? I think that is something that every single member of this council supports and would like to support you in that proposal. The fact that you are standing down as leader did not come as a surprise to me, because you extended the courtesy of telling me in advance with my deputy this morning. Leader, you and I both had the privilege of serving the community of Homewood. I started in 2015 with no experience whatsoever in politics, and of course you will say I still do not have experience in politics. But I knew when you were elected that I was to serve alongside an experienced and respected councillor with a long-standing community name. And I learnt a bucket load in those 4 years, and I am very grateful for that. Interestingly, I also found that there is not a world of difference between being a Labour councillor and being a Conservative councillor when your focus is on your community, and you taught me that. We share many, many things in common, and we share many views about what is right for the people in our community. We have one or two fundamental differences, and I'm going to hang a hat on one of them a little bit later on. But having extended the courtesy to me, of advising me of your decision today in advance, you also said, I don't enjoy praise and I don't like platitudes, so please don't give me any. And for the first time, I am delighted to go with your recommendation. Seriously, while leaving your role as leader, you are not leaving this council, not for another year. You are not leaving the people of Homewood. And the reason that you have made this change is one that every single person in this chamber will respect and understand. And that is to spend more time with your family, and in particular, your 4 grandchildren. And you carry with you, when you leave, our very best wishes for you and your family. Now, I said there was one fundamental difference between us, and that fundamental difference is one which is mirrored across the country between Conservatives and Labour, and that is unions and private sector. And there are times when you wonder if you have got it right, because the private sector have not done the right thing by 800 people who work on the P&O ferries. We are a seafaring community. The island is a seafaring community. We have a coastal heritage, and we will have people in our community who are directly affected by what I am ashamed is the decision made by a private sector business. And this is the right place for a union to be, looking after the bargaining, collective bargaining, and the safe working conditions. And 2 of the ships that P&O own have already been held in harbour because they are no longer safe. So I respect the rights of unions and I respect the work they do, and I hope they get a first-class deal for the people who were shamefully treated by P&O ferries. And on that note, thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. Councillor Darby, just a statement. Okay, thank you. I invite members to give their responses, please. Councillor Baldock.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I know that platitudes and kind words and things are not comfortably received, so I hope you're going to be uncomfortable. Because I remember longer ago than I care to remember, or I care to admit, when I was on your first campaign to get elected to this council in 1980 something, and it was in the ward that I now represent, Borden. Changed now, it's Borden and Grove Park, but at the time it was country village that had been represented by Conservatives for a long time, and you put up a challenge. And I remember being in Margaret Milliken's house, doing the Reading sheet, and that was the start of something which I don't think you at that time would have expected to be the case. The start of a long and high-profile career in Sittingbourne, where you have delivered first for my village and for the whole of Sittingbourne consistently, while spending so much time in opposition. And that is a challenge. It is a challenge to sit there always in opposition, apart from a short period in the 90s, but to always be in opposition and still deliver, to still have that gusto, that willingness to serve people. And that, you know, a lot of people get drained by that. A lot of people find that a really depressing route to have to keep taking. And then when I joined this council in 2015, we were both in opposition groups. And we worked together well then. I'm obviously skipping the 8 years I was in Labour for the sake of briefness, but and we worked well then. But when I came onto this council, you know, it was difficult, and we were in what many people considered fundamentally different parties. But as the leader of the opposition has said, when it's about councillors, when it's about working for local people and representing local people, the party side of it really goes to one side, and you do what you think is best for your community, what you think is the best for the people of Swale. So we put, we put those party divisions aside and try to work constructively, even in opposition. And I don't think either of us were really expecting in 2019 that after your 20 odd years on the council, we would be in a position to make you leader. I think it's absolutely undoubtedly the right thing that we did. I think you have shown for those 3 years how to lead a council, with, won't say sagacity, because we know what comes after that, and indefatigability for those who wouldn't like that comparison. But you have led this and shown the way that a council can be led in a way that's inclusive and a way that has got the support of the people as well as the other parties on it. But I say thank you, Roger. Whilst I've been your deputy, it has been a true honour, and I hope you enjoy your final year on the council.
Councillor Beard, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it was supposed to be in the leader's statement, but he ran out of time. So I would simply ask, will he join me in congratulating Sheppey United on being on their league promotion last night? Not just in friendlies, but we're now looking forward to competitively beating Sittingbourne and Faversham.
Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I too have worked with you for a long time, Roger, and not for the initial 2.5 years that you have led the council, where I've watched from the outside in, having tried to retire and failed. The thing I most remember about the early days, apart from the fact, of course, that we were then in the same party until you wobbled a bit, was to remind people here that everybody accepts these days that we have a climate emergency and a biodiversity emergency, and it was you who invented and developed and chaired the first environment committee of this council, and it did some extremely good work in the early 90s and beyond that. So I'm certainly sorry to see you retire, although I very much understand the reasons for you doing it. And you did mention that you were lucky with the coalition, and I won't be rude and ask it as a question, but actually say that it seems to me that the coalition was also very lucky with you as someone who was able to build that coalition and make it work for 3 years. And I wasn't sure in May 2019 that it would work, and it has worked, and I think that is very much down to you. So I hope you enjoy your last year not having to do quite as much work as you've been doing. Thank you.
Councillor Martin, please.
I'd have a hard time following my colleague, aren't I, on this one? But I can say quite safely, I'm probably the only owner of a Roger Truelove Liberal Democrat working for you, Dayglow orange poster. Still with the old skinny Libby. I'm afraid the archives at Faversham do live in my address, Roger. But it has been a real privilege. You took an awful lot of very new councillors, very green councillors in 2019 under your wing. You helped us see which way we can go, how we can work. And for many of us, we haven't had that experience of opposition at the moment, which long may it continue, please. No, thank you. However, I do appreciate how long you had spent on those benches and how frustrating that can be and would have been. And I think it is testament that actually when you look over the previous leader, 17 years leader, they certainly didn't have the problems to deal with that you have had over the last 3 years. Let's face it, a pandemic, a crisis in Ukraine, cliffs collapsing on Sheppey, and having to hold together a 5-party coalition. I don't think anyone would envy it on day one, but you've sailed through it like a swan swimming on the top. No one's really noticed, but then underneath, we know how hard you had to work. And with no chief exec in those first few months, we know how many hours you were putting in, holding it all together, not just as a council, but also holding staffing together. And it is a great testament that you have left us, or you will be leaving us, with a stable management structure, with stable finances, and in a position to continue on the good work that you have started. So thank you very much.
Councillor Bonney, please.
Thank you. And thank you, Roger. Well done. And as someone said to me, it doesn't feel like 3 years the coalition have been together. I think it is actually quite incredible. Most people would say, how many parties in your coalition? And you've held it all together. Behind the scenes, there has been a huge amount of work. You know, there are obviously meetings with officers, also external parties. And I think Roger has been a magnificent ambassador in those roles with those external parties, and the credibility of Swale has shone through that. So I'd like to say thank you. And I just remember your expression and my expression when we realised we could form a coalition at that election. And I said, we've done it. Who's going to lead? And you said, I'd like to lead. And we thrashed out over the next week a sensible working frame and bringing 5 parties together with that, and staying true to those core fundamentals that we agreed at the outset, and that we identified the skills and talents within those 5 parties of those particular goals we'd set ourselves and stuck to them. So well done, and thank you very much.
Councillor Winklis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd also like to pay tribute to Councillor Truelove, leader of this council. I mean, the way he has been a great stewardship of leading this council through the COVID-19 virus, etc., has not been easy, and kept the coalition together. So I would like to thank you, Roger, for the work that you've done. Thank you.
Councillor Harrison, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I thought I'd better say something, otherwise they'd be saying they'd be making up stories. I think, like they do, I think two things I wanted to say. Firstly, that during this last 3 years, the respect that Roger has shown to everybody in this chamber, more specifically the opposition, in direct contrast to the way that the opposition were treated prior to May 19. He's treated people as he had hoped to be treated, and would hope that people treat you in the future. And I think that is a credit to the man that he is, that he stayed at that high level. He is highly respected in this council, in this community, and indeed elsewhere across Kent and far beyond. The other thing I wanted to say is your integrity, Roger, shines through. Thank you.
Are there any other members that wish to speak? If not, then
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't going to, but as Councillor Truelove knows, we kind of started this journey as local councillors back in the late 80s, when, as was referred, he was of a different political colour. All I will say, and it will be brief, we've we've had our political differences, but Roger always attends to business with a good sense of humour. He listens and he's very fair in his decision making. So I would thank him for that, and I wish him well in whatever he takes, what the path he takes in the future. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and it's up to the Mayor now to have the last words, I think, on this. It's my chance and my pleasure to say to Roger a big thank you on a personal note, because if there was ever a problem, if there was ever anything one of these new Green members what needed to know, which was myself, Roger always had a sound word and a correct word and instilled confidence in those that were a little bit unsure about how to proceed. And that has stood me in good stead, and only to become Mayor on the back of that, I think. And that's my gratitude to Roger, and what an excellent job he's done, and good luck for the future. Thank you very much, Roger. And I think I haven't got the last word. Councillor Truelove, would you like to come back and have the very last word on this one?
It's unprecedented for me to say that I agree with everything that's been said, even including Councillor Beart's reference to Sheppey United. That really is good, and it's all part, I hope, of Sheppey on the up. Really, there's a lot more community feeling there. And I think a football team doing well is part of that. I'm not going to respond to everybody else. I just want to say this, that it is a 5-party coalition. So there's 5 leaders, and all the leaders of the different parties have shown strong leadership qualities and have been responsible for delivering a lot of what we've done. So Councillor Baldock has shown incredible leadership in the constitutional changes that we've introduced. Councillor Martin has transformed the way we look at housing. Councillor Valentine has made this council one of the foremost climate change councils in the country. And Councillor Bonney has looked after property, and in particular, and continues to make the Spirit of Sittingbourne, or the Sittingbourne Town Centre, something that is sustainable for us and brings a great deal of expertise. So it is a team, and of course the rest of the cabinet as well. And I hope it continues to be a team as we go forward. I think I said to the other day, I wasn't sure how far we would get in 2019. I think we've got far further than I anticipated, and it's because of the collective good work of the members of the cabinet, but also their individual good work. Thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Thank you, Leader. Okay, moving on to agenda item number 6, questions submitted by the public. There is one question submitted by a member of the public, Mr. Collins, and he would like to ask the question to the Cabinet Member for Economy and Property. Unfortunately, Mr. Collins can't be here for technical reasons, so I shall be reading out his question. Swale can lead the way among statutory authorities in the transformation of local infrastructure and economy, which the climate emergency demands. The challenge to achieve maximum sustainability presents many opportunities for employment at all levels. What is the Council doing to promote training to equip the local workforce with the requisite motivation and skills? Councillor Bonney, please.
Thank you. So this covers 2 portfolios, but I shall answer. So I don't know if there's a follow-up he's given you. So thank him for his question. I know he can't be here tonight. So the council has adopted a leadership role locally in declaring a climate and ecology emergency in 2019. Alongside this, a climate and ecological emergency plan, I will spit it out, was adopted in 2020 and sets out a broad range of actions against which progress is being made. This includes the rollout of carbon literacy training for all the council's own workforce, which seeks to deepen the understanding both of the issues and the opportunities for individuals and the council to consider how they contribute to meeting the challenges both personally and through their work programmes. Whilst wider responsibility and funding for learning and skills rests with KCC and other institutions, the council has nonetheless placed great importance on promoting improved access, attainment, progression, encouraging learning providers to help address what are significant and fundamental skills gaps in the resident population. We also work with partners to encourage employers to invest in workforce development and directly promote opportunities for business to make their operations more sustainable. Continuing to raise awareness amongst employers, improving links between them, learning providers and new business opportunities associated with addressing climate change all help motivate investment in the skills that will be needed. But inevitably, more could be done. The council will continue to play its role, working with employers and providers and new funding opportunities, such as the UK Shared Prosperity Fund, which may also give district councils the ability to more directly influence local learning provision and support employee skills for the future.
Thank you, Councillor Bonney. There are no supplementary questions. Thank you. Item agenda 7, questions submitted by members. One question has been received from members, a schedule of which has been circulated by email. The question and response will be circulated to members by email tomorrow. Councillor Davey, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Please, can the Cabinet member advise on the correct procedures, protocols, criteria and data gathering methods required and their method of presentation in order that the CCTV cameras can be reinstalled in Milton High Street? Thank you.
Councillor Palmer, please.
Thank you for your question, Councillor Davey. Swale Borough Council will consider the introduction of CCTV in consultation with Kent Police. In order to ensure that there is evidence of a legitimate aim and need, the council consider the type of issue being encountered in a specified area, the volume of incidents reported to Kent Police in a 6-month period, including the frequency and victim profile. It is important that people report incidents to the police via the 101 system or in an emergency situation via 999. How it is felt that CCTV will specifically contribute to resolving the problem and if it will be effective are the considerations. In relation to Milton High Street, Kent Police have not highlighted this location as one of concern or need for CCTV since the cameras there were removed. CCTV would also be considered as a possible action when a problematic location is highlighted to the CSU unit, the Community Safety Unit of Swale. As stated above, residents must report all incidents to the police. Ward members play a key role in this and should be stressing to residents the need to report all incidents to the correct authority. Reporting incidents via social media does not negate reporting incidents to the police. The ward members could also highlight to the CSU team any problematic locations within their wards. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Palmer. Councillor David, do you have a supplementary question? Thank you. We're going to move on to agenda item 8, motion violence against women and girls. A motion concerning violence against women and girls has been received as set out on the agenda. The 2 amendments have been received as circulated to members and tabled. There is a maximum time of 30 minutes to debate the motion.
Point of order, Mr. Mayor. So there are 2 amendments. Can we have confirmation that if the first one is passed, the second one will automatically fall?
I think we need to wait to see how the motion goes, and that will be answered. I can assure you of that. That has already been debated and or discussed prior to this meeting. And if you wait to see what comes out of the motion, you'll find out why. Thank you. Members, please bear with us. Councillor Hannah Perkin invites you to propose the motion. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. With permission of the meeting and through you, Mr. Mayor, I would like to alter the motion to reflect the wording as presented in Amendment 1. So I think we have to get agreement from the council for that to happen.
Okay, do members agree that the motion or the amendment, the first amendment, is going to be added to the motion? And everyone agreed? Thank you, members.
Fabulous, thank you. I'd also, just for a point of clarity, like to point out that there was a correction of an inaccuracy in the printed delivery of the motion, which has been corrected in the motion that is presented this evening. Just correcting the amount of what previously said 3% of reported rapes are heard in court. It's now 3% of reported rapes will end in conviction. So it was really just to correct the public record. Thank you. So just over a year ago, we all watched with horror as the story of Sarah Everard unfolded. She was tricked by a serving police officer, kidnapped, raped and murdered, and her body left in a woodland near Ashford. Not long after this, a PCSO from Julia James, a PCSO from Snowdon, was killed when out walking her dog near her home. Since then, at least 125 women have been killed, and as an average, 2 more women will lose their lives as a direct result of violence at the hands of men every week. Every year, MP Jess Phillips reads the names of women lost the previous year in Parliament. This year, there were 10 more women than for the previous year. 10 more mothers, daughters, sisters, aunties, friends and colleagues. As the motion states, the ONS reported that in 2020 alone, 618,000 women in England and Wales were victims of sexual assault or attempted sexual assault by a man. To put that number into context, that is over 4 times the entire population of Swale. More than 1 incident of rape or assault or attempted assault every minute of every day for a year. Following the death of Sarah Everard, I conducted a survey of women that live in Faversham to ask them what their feelings were about their own safety. I consider Faversham to be a safe place. I was pleased that the vast majority of those women that responded felt safe to move around Faversham during the day. I was saddened, but not particularly surprised to see that that number dropped to well below 50% for women in Faversham at night. I also asked them if they took any precautions when going out at night, and I wanted to read some of them to you so that you can hear the little things that women have told me that they regularly do to keep themselves safe. 1. I avoid any man or men not walking with a child or a dog. I only walk during the day. I keep my dog closer to me when I walk past men to try and make it appear that my dog might be more aggressive if they approach. I also carry pepper spray. 2. I carry keys in my hand at night and use most well-lit routes. I don't use alleyways, side streets or underpasses. Number 3. I will never wear both headphones or have my hair in a ponytail at night so that I can hear what is around me and I can't be grabbed by my hair. 4. I'm cautionary towards other people. I always make sure to have my phone handy, and I normally am on a call with someone to make sure that if someone does want to harm me, someone will know, be on the other end of the phone. There were over 300 responses to that question. I wanted to thank the Community Safety Partnership and Councillors Palmer and Jays for the work that they have been doing in collaboration with Kent Police. I also want to thank Councillor Woodford for working on this motion with me. I also particularly wanted to thank Steph Curtis for the programme of work that she has been supporting, and Satida for their continued work supporting women who experience domestic violence in our borough. I wanted to recognise as well that men and boys can also be victims of domestic violence, rape and assault, and that those men and boys absolutely deserve access to services and support too. I would offer my support to any councillor that would like to bring a motion that highlights this to the council. That said, this evening, I'm here specifically to highlight the realities of women in our communities. Just last year, Her Majesty's Inspector of the Constabulary, Zoe Billingham, said, "We are living during a national epidemic of violence against women and girls. Offending against women and girls is deep-rooted and pervasive in our society. Urgent action is needed to uproot and address this, and police cannot solve this alone. There must be a seamless approach to preventing and tackling violence against women and girls across the whole system, including education, local authorities, health, social care, and from across the criminal justice system, with all agencies working together. The key here is the final sentence.
30 seconds remaining.
All agencies working together. This motion rightly commits Wellborough Council to continuing to do everything in its power to build a borough free of misogyny and violence against women and girls, and I hope that you can all support it. As a local authority, we must play our part, and I present this motion to the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkin. I'll ask Councillor Corey Woodford to second the motion and ask if you wish to speak now or reserve your right.
Thank you. I'm pleased to second the motion. I'll speak now. Thank you. I was pleased to second the motion proposed by Councillor Perkin. I've worked as a teacher within the pastoral system of secondary schools for over 10 years. My current role sees me as the lead of sixth form at a majority girls' school. The impact of these following statistics is all too real for the students I support. 1/3 of 16 to 18-year-old girls say they have experienced unwanted sexual touching at school. 59% of women aged 13 to 21 say they have faced some form of sexual harassment at school or college in the past year. 600 rapes were reported to police in schools between 2012 and 2015, an average of a rape every day of the school year. Nearly 3/4, 71% of 16 to 18-year-olds say they hear terms like slut or slag used towards girls on a regular basis. 71% of girls and young women aged between 7 and 21 years have experienced some form of harmful content online in the last year. 49% of those girls were aged 7 to 10, but by the time the girls reached 17 years old, this rose to a staggering 91%. 23% of 11 to 16-year-olds and a third aged 17 to 21 have experienced harassment such as unwanted messages or receiving threats. This was higher for LGBTQ girls and young women, 42 compared to 24 who were straight. Disabled girls also more likely to be harassed online, 40% compared to 25 who are not disabled. These statistics are from the End Violence Against Women campaign group and Girl Guidance 2021 Girls Attitude Survey, but they are supported by the Department of Education's own report conducted by Ofsted. In 2021, a report into the review of sexual abuse in schools and colleges found almost all girls in schools had experienced at least one form of abuse, with 90% experienced sexist name calling, 92 being sent unsolicited explicit pictures or videos. The review also revealed how prevalent sexual harassment and online abuse are for children and young people. The report stated it is concerning that for some children, incidents are so commonplace they see no point in reporting them. Children and young people told the review that sexual harassment occurs so frequently that it's become commonplace. For example, 92% of girls and 74% of boys said that sexist name calling happens a lot or sometimes to them or their peers. The frequency of these harmful sexual behaviours means that some children and young people consider them normal. Men, and especially boys, are sometimes victims of these forms of abuse as well. It's important to support.
30 seconds remaining.
It's important that support is available for them and that this abuse is challenged. Nearly 50% of boys being sent explicit pictures or videos of things they did not want to see happening, a lot or sometimes happened to them or their peers. However, violence against women and girls is part of what is stopping women achieving equality. The widespread experience of violence limits women's freedoms and choices and forces them to make calculations about what is and is not safe for them to do. As Councillor Perkins emphasised, the key is all agencies working together. I would like to commend the work so far by Kent Police, the Community Safety Partnership and Outreach.
That's 3 minutes now. Thank you.
Can I just finish? Beginning within the schools. I'd also like to thank Steph Curtis for the work she is leading on behalf of Swale Borough Council. There, unfortunately, is still a long way to go, but with the united front, we can make progress towards our end goal of forever ending violence against women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Woodford. I would ask that Councillors Lloyd Bowen and Alan Horton, do you wish to continue with your amendments?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think Lloyd's is probably answered, and I need permission of the council to withdraw mine, and I seek that permission. Thank you. Agree.
Thank you very much, members. I now open up the debate to other members to speak on the amendment. You have 3 minutes each. Councillor Bowen.
I'll press it again, right? Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Perkin, and for working with the amendments as submitted from myself. And the reason for why I put the amendment was, and I prepared it earlier, so I'm going to say it anyway. Otherwise, it'll be a wasted opportunity. And it's about words, and what's really powerful about words. One word, a quote, one sentence can have huge implications on our perception. It can make or break us. Words are free, and it's how we use them that matters. And words, whether a question or a statement or emotion, must be used skillfully and effectively. And when used with skill, words can contain a power and energy that shifts mindsets, opens dialogue, motivates, inspires other people, and even ourselves. Used ineffectively, words can demotivate, discourage, disengage, and in extreme cases, hurt and make someone ill. So I am absolutely delighted that we have changed the wording and agreed the amendment as put in. I think a motion needs to be transparent. It has to be clear and understandable without being able to be misinterpreted. And I think that the statement now reading that we will condemn violence of any kind against women and children, not just girls, but it's children, or related to transphobia, homophobia, misogyny and hate crime goes a long way. I think the motion allows the council to stand up for this and other causes where it's appropriate to do so. I'm also happy that we are reaffirming our commitment to the White Ribbon campaign. We signed the pledge last year to never commit, excuse or remain silent about male violence against women, and this edition reminds us that that pledge at an appropriate time as a White Ribbon campaign is mentioned in the text of the motion. Words of emotion are key, and how they are interpreted. Motions should not be in a position to be misinterpreted, but clear and transparent. And it's for this reason I'm delighted to support this motion. Thank you.
Councillor Horton, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to start by expressing my gratitude to both Councillor Perkin and Councillor Woodford for working with us to find a form of words that enabled us to fully support this motion. Working together in a position of compromise where we both showed recognition and sensitivity for each other's concerns has enabled us to arrive at a motion that says what we all feel and enables us to say it with meaning. This topic transcends politics. There should be no doubt, and nobody in this room who doesn't support this motion and the aspects that are contained within it. I have the pleasure and the honour of being the governor at 2 primary schools, and I have read the Ofsted report from 2021, and I have read the changes that they made to safeguarding in 20 and 2021, and the changes that they are proposing to safeguarding to bring in September of this year. It is the most horrific document I have ever read, and I have been a police officer for 30 years. It is the most damning indictment on our society and the position in which we have all allowed people to behave that I have ever read. It is utterly shocking, and I commend it to you if you are in any doubt whatsoever how serious this problem is. This is conversations with people that are children. Primary age children saying they are sexually harassed at school on a weekly, daily basis. That cannot ever be right. We have pledged, and let's just reflect on the pledge, to turn your head, to look away, to ignore in any way what is going on, to keep your mouth closed and not say anything, or to take part in banter, are to condone the behaviour of these animals. And we can't do that. Reflect, please.
30 seconds remaining.
Evil flourishes when good people do nothing. Do not be a good person who does nothing. Thank you.
Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm not even sure as I stand up here whether I can find the right words for what I want to say. But certainly initially, I am delighted that this motion has come to the council. And it's perhaps a pity it didn't come to the council 10 years ago. I'm a very ordinary white middle-class heterosexual male, and I confess I find it really difficult to understand why on earth this is a problem. But it is clearly a huge problem. And all I'd like to say is, regardless of the precise wording of the motion, we need to work towards ensuring that in everything we say, everything we do, any policies we may develop, but I'm more interested in action than policies, we are saying it is entirely unacceptable. Violence to women, and I noted that Councillor Perkins said at a different time we might pick up violence elsewhere, but violence to women is unacceptable in any form, in any way, whether it is physical violence or sexual violence. However it is done, we have to try in everything we do to follow this up, to actually change attitudes. When I was in my late teens and early 20s, I was living down in the countryside in Sussex. And in those days, the police and everybody else took a very relaxed view of drunken driving. And on the other hand, poaching was pretty well a hanging offence. And over, well, that's been quite a few years since I was in my late teens.
30 seconds remaining.
But since then, largely drunken driving has become unacceptable. And it's that change in attitude that we really have to work on. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Truelove, please.
Yeah, first of all, I'd like to congratulate the Councillor Perkins, Councillor Woodford for bringing this forward. Some of the things we've seen reported in the last year are harrowing and horrifying, but as Councillor Perkins pointed out, that they are just the high-profile cases, and the violence towards women is so much like an epidemic that it's something that really needs a much more serious national consideration. The people who do this are warped, but they are an extension of a whole cultural problem of an attitude to women that they're some kind of object, and this obsession with reporting salacious things about women in the public eye. The fact that you get media comments on the physical appearance of weather forecasters if they're women, but not if they're men. That doesn't matter. That you have an obsession with the private lives of well-known women. And this, for a lot of boys and men, this just creates the idea that women are just sexual beings without the high qualities they've got in some sense. it's, if we're going to have a cultural battle, as some people want, counterculture, let's have a cultural battle around these sort of issues. And when people raise these sort of issues, let's not call them woke and insult them. Realize that they are concentrating on a very serious reflection on a culture that is in many ways not as it should be. Thank you.
Councillor Palmer, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I wasn't actually intending to speak, but it was something that Councillor Horton said that I think is worth mentioning. I agree, words are very important, Councillor Boyne, but also we're important. At the start of the pandemic, I walked up to the local co-op for a pint of milk and a newspaper. And you described an animal. And yes, there was an animal outside the co-op, whether it's his wife or his partner, but a young lady, and the behaviour and what was happening was totally inappropriate. I challenged him. There was about 10 or 15 other people there. I challenged him. He was very aggressive. I was actually quite scared. The people were calling 999, and actually other people in the queue also challenged him and told him outright that behaviour was totally unacceptable. In that queue, I was the youngest person. There was people in their 70s and 80s having a go at that person. And I think it's a message to us all. Yes, words are important, but you're right. It's in our hands. It's when we see people who are doing the wrong thing, we should challenge them. Thankfully, and the ironic thing is, the police arrived fairly quickly, thankfully, and they were able to convince them to go back. And the two police officers who initially attended and dealt with him were two female officers, which I thought was quite ironic in some respect. But what I'm trying to get across, it's down to us not to tolerate and to allow people to get away with that sort of behaviour. Thank you.
Councillor Dendall, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yes, I'll be brief. I wanted to pick up on 2 points, really, from what other speakers have said. One is what Councillor Horton said. I'm also a governor of primary schools and also a chair of several charities. And the 2 points I pick up, one is in the primary schools, and it picks up with what Councillor Henderson said as well. You must be careful of learned behaviour. When you watch the primary children, as I have, and you see them mimicking behaviour they have seen somewhere else, dare I say, in their own home, a lot of the time, that will then creep into their school time. It will creep into their leisure time, and so on. And of course, it goes from generation to generation. So you talk about a cultural change, but that cultural change must start right at that age. It must start at the schools stopping that kind of behaviour. The other one on charities, I would commend several of the KCC officers recently. I can't obviously say much detail about this, but I presume that Swell Borough Council officers are exactly the same, who did a due diligence on a charity that we're being asked to give funds to, and they did it very, very well indeed, and came back and said they don't have the right safeguarding policy, they don't have the right protection in the building, they don't have the right way of guarding the children when they're in the building. This is I can't say too much, but this is children inside a community building. And again, I would commend the officers completely for doing their due diligence. I guess the message is, if anybody's dealing with charities, please do your due diligence to make sure it is a proper charity and they are doing the proper things. I've written many safeguarding policies over the years, and you've got to look that they are A, writing them properly, and B, carrying out what they've written. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Dendall. As there's no more questions, then I'll Councillor Perkin, as the proposer of the motion, do you wish to sum up the debate?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, everybody, for your positive words about the motion and also for sharing your personal experiences in whatever vein they come in. I just wanted to pick up on the fact that there's been a couple of people who have kind of singled out violence against women as kind of an animalistic act. Actually, the reality of it is that it starts very young and it's very normal. It's a normal experience for a lot of women. 1 in 4 women will be raped in their lifetime. So the chances are you know someone who has raped someone, or you are someone that has raped somebody. Like that's the that is the truth of it all. And it's really problematic to not realise how very ingrained this is. I think also it's really important to look at what the government are doing at the moment, and I commend them for what they're doing in the Enough campaign, which recently has had adverts on Channel 4 saying, you know, that kind of locker room banter is inappropriate and needs to be stopped, and call your mates out on it. We've all got opportunities where we can call people out on it, and the White Ribbon Pledge very much commits us to doing that. So I want to thank you all for listening, and hope that everyone can take away and do what they can to change the culture of misogyny. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkin. I would ask members now, we're going to vote by a show of hands, and all those in favour, please raise your hand clearly. So content counting everybody else's. I think that's unanimous. Thank you. So the result is that the motion has been carried. Thank you. Agenda item 8, motion on Ukraine. A motion concerning Ukraine has been received as set out on the agenda. An amendment has been received as circulated to members and tabled. There is a maximum of time of 30 minutes to debate the motion. Councillor Mike Dendor, I invite you to propose the motion. You have 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm sure that we all welcome the recent press release from the council leaders, but I believe the whole council should be given the opportunity to have their say on the suffering from the conflict in Ukraine, So I refer you to the motion before you, which I hope you've taken the time to read. I have some personal history connected with the Ukrainian people in that my father, who was born in Poland, you may notice the Polish eagle on my lapel here, escaped from the Russians almost 83 years ago in 1939, when the Russians invaded Poland from the east at the same time as Germany invaded from the west. I have no idea how he got to the UK, as he would not speak about the war at all. All I know about his experiences came from my mother and later on my relatives in Poland. After getting to the UK, he joined up with the Polish 1st Parachute Brigade, who were training with the British Parachute Regiment in Scotland, and that is where he met my mother. He fought with the brigade throughout the war. After the war, he continued to hold a passport with the Free Polish government based in London. He did not get back to Poland to see his family until 1967, 28 years later. Even then, he would not take us with him as he was afraid that he might be arrested when he got there. We eventually accompanied him to Poland in 1968, it being the first time that my mother, my sister and I met the Polish side of our family. Unfortunately, my father did not live to see the Berlin Wall come down in 1989, or the dissolution of the Free Polish government in 1990, which was due to the new and free Polish Republic being formed 51 years after he left Poland. His story has an uncomfortable parallel with the Ukraine and Ukrainian refugees, particularly as both series of events were driven by dictators. Stalin in 1939 and Putin now. And I do use the word dictator. We only hope that it will not take 28 years for Ukrainians to get back to their homeland and see their families, or indeed 50 years for them to get their freedom back. I'm pleased to see that our councils, including Swale and Kent, are already taking steps to divest interest, investments or supplies in and from Russian companies. We've had several emails recently from our leader at Kent on that theme. The government also is taking steps to end dependence on Russian-sourced energy and suppliers, including, as I understand, seizure of Gazprom assets and other assets where possible. The government is also working, I believe, with the rest of the free world to ensure safe passage of refugees, safe havens, and is on with other countries to ensure that war criminals are answerable to international law. The people of our country, our county and our districts, together with our government and councils, I believe, have opened their arms and their hearts and offered sanctuary to genuine war refugees, as our country has done throughout its long history, which I personally am very proud of. Kent and Swale are both highly active in this, and as with refugees from other conflicts, including Syria and Afghanistan, we can be proud of Swale, our borough, of Kent, our county, and I think of our country. I have the honour to propose the motion before you, which I hope you will all support. Thank you.
I would like to ask Councillor Cameron Burt to second the motion and ask if he wishes to speak now or reserve his right.
I wish to speak now, Mr. Mayor, please.
Okay.
Whilst I cannot try to follow the story set out by Councillor Dendor in his proposal, I agreed to second this motion as I too have close connections with this part of the world. For those who don't know, my mother is a permanent resident of the Czech Republic, and it is a country I've spent a lot of time in over the years and have many friends there. The Czech Republic, like many of its Slavic neighbours, has endured unprovoked and illegal invasion from their neighbour states in living memory for many of their people. Whether it was Nazi Germany in 1938, or the liberating USSR in the 40s, or the USSR again in the 1960s, the scars are still very much prominent. It's quite easy to draw a connection between what is happening in Crimea and the Donbass with what happened in the Sudetenland, claiming to liberate whilst trying to install a puppet state, largely against the will of the people. When I've been out there, I always comment how you can have a pretty good guess at aging someone, even a stranger, by their second language after Czech. When I speak to people my age and younger, they nearly all speak perfect English. That is what they are taught in the modern age. Many people of my parents' generation tend to speak Russian. And then when you go to the people of my grandparents' generation, some of them still speak German. This clearly shows the impact that outside influence of occupying forces has to show those of an unwelcomed influence, but it has eventually failed and people have held on to their own identity and persevered throughout. We are seeing unbelievable strength and determination in Ukraine, and their people will persevere. At the recent Czech general elections last year, the country voted overwhelmingly for the first time to actually change the old ways and to show a different and new time has come to Europe. The Communist Party, who are still prominent, have been ousted from Parliament, not winning a single seat for the first time since 1945. I will therefore leave my remarks with two short quotes. The first, from the new Conservative Prime Minister of the Czech Republic, Petr Fiala, on the night of the Russian Federation's illegal invasion of Ukraine, where he said, "We will remember well from our own history that similar steps against sovereign neighbour states never leads to peace." The second is an amended quote from Winston Churchill from 1940s, when I have changed the reference to Czechoslovakia, swapped out for Ukraine to apply it to our current situation and send the same message with this motion. Ukrainians, the hour of your liberation is approaching.
Thank you, Councillor Burt. Now that the motion has been proposed and seconded, we will debate the amendment before returning to the substantive motion. And now invite Councillor Ben J. Martin to propose your amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to Councillors Dender and Beart for bringing this motion before the council. I do welcome it, and it wasn't a case of wanting to change a motion with an amendment for the sake of it. It really was a case of looking and going, are there actions that we can take? Are there things that we can do? And in doing that, I looked through what are other councils doing? What are Amnesty International asking for? What are people on the ground asking for? And then I started listening to some more of the stories. And I'm sure most of us have listened to the BBC Sounds podcasts over the last few weeks, a month, I suppose now, isn't it? 35 days. And we'll have heard the story of the BBC Russia correspondent based in London and of his mother and aunt who have travelled across Ukraine. They've managed to get to Lviv. For those that don't know, the aunt is bedridden and unable to move herself. She relies entirely on this journalist's mum for everything. And they managed to get out of Mariupol and they managed to get to Lviv. When they got to Lviv, they asked how they apply for the visa to get to the UK, the family visa. They need to get to Warsaw. They need to queue. They need to fill out the 50-page document. With somebody who cannot move, you've got to move them across a second country, having moved across the entire distance of one, in order to get the support that's needed to get to the UK in the first place. I'm not saying waiver visas, I'm saying simplify the form for a start. Does it need to be 50 pages long? Let's make it as simple as we can. Let's make it so that people can get to freedom and safety. In terms of corridors within Ukraine to escape the areas of high shelling, we've seen no end of times how those corridors are said to be open. The buses get in, people get on the bus, and then the shelling starts again and the buses go nowhere. Sometimes you wonder whether they just want the buses so they can take the fuels from them. We need those routes protected, and we need to see that there are independent agencies there to assess that those routes are there and they are safe and they are actually being looked out for. We also need to look at what else, where our funds are going. The Kent Pension Fund is has one of the biggest contributions towards fossil fuels of any of the pension funds in local government in the country. And some of those funds
30 seconds
were,
remaining.
at the time of putting this amendment in, based in Russia. What I'm asking for are a few actions that we can take today added onto the original motion, which I don't think detract from the motion. I think it adds further weight to our cause. I think everyone in this chamber fully stands with Ukraine, and I hope you'll support the amendment.
Thank you. Councillor Hannah Perkin, I invite you to second the amendment. You may speak now or reserve your right. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The United Kingdom was among a core group of countries that drafted the 1951 Refugee Convention and was among the first to sign and ratify it, taking the lead in putting refugee protection into action. The war in Ukraine is a humanitarian catastrophe, with large-scale civilian casualties and more than 2 million forced to flee within the first 2 weeks. This illegal war, alongside crises in Syria and Afghanistan, have shone a light on elements of the Nationalities and Borders Bill currently making its way through Parliament that fly in the face of this convention. Amnesty International are currently encouraging people to write to their MP to call for the damaging measures in the bill to be abandoned, and it would be remiss as a member of Amnesty International of me to not raise this evening. It was good to see the government create settlement schemes quickly and to see the UK commit humanitarian resources and working with global partners to ensure all those involved in crimes under international law are held accountable. The British public has shown incredible generosity. Over 200,000 British families offered to open their doors to people fleeing the illegal murderous war in Ukraine. According to the Homes for Ukraine scheme statistics released today, only 2,700 refugees have been given spare rooms under this scheme. Refugees Minister Lord Harrington has stated today that we are starting to see progress due to Home Office changes made to streamline the process, and I hope that progress continues and rapidly. It's heartwarming to see the outpouring of public support for Ukraine. The DEC has raised millions of pounds. Locally, community groups have sprung into action, running collections and offering sponsorship. And it's difficult to go far without seeing Ukrainian flags in shop windows, on public buildings, on people's jacket lapels. I'm thankful to Councillor Dendor and to Councillor Beart for bringing the motion to Council this evening, and also to Councillor Martin for drafting amendments to call for continued action and support from the government and for de-investment, which I think adds tangible actions to a good motion, and I'm happy to second. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Perkin. I will now open up the debate for members to speak on the amendment. First one is Councillor Baldock, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you to those who have proposed the motion, and thank you for those who have made this amendment. I really welcome this amendment. I'm not somebody who usually thinks, yeah, let's intervene everywhere, let's send the missiles out, let's send the troops out. We've done that quite a lot in the last few years, and often the results have been quite tragic, unforeseen, and quite unnecessary. But what I see here is an indefensible invasion of a people who didn't go out of their way to ask for it, didn't provoke it, are totally innocent, and are having their heart bombed out of their cities and their towns, having children killed in hospitals. It is one of the most appalling acts that this continent has seen. And I sit there and I hear the excuses why we can't take more action, why we have to consider whether or not doing X action is appropriate. And I find it quite hard to justify that we sit there watching people being killed. And even when Poland is willing to give America aeroplanes to go in and help protect a no-fly zone, which is what the Ukrainians want, a reason is found why that can't be done either. And I find it hard to support that. So I welcome this, especially the third point under G, imposing the severest economic, financial, technical and cultural sanctions on the Russian state. And I also think we've heard of in the last few days that there may be a way out of this. There may be somewhat unravelled today, but it may occur again. And I really welcome a statement by Boris Johnson this afternoon that even in the event of a ceasefire, sanctions will continue. And sanctions shouldn't just continue after a ceasefire, they should continue until Putin is removed.
Councillor Horton, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor, and it may strike some of you a little bit odd that the Leader of the Opposition is standing up to speak on an amendment and is going to speak in support of the amendment. And I'm going to do that because what the amendment highlights is that we are the council and we have a role to play. And that role is more than just words and letters. It's what can we practically do. And today on the news, there was a really disturbing report, and some of you may have seen it, that families from the Ukraine are turning up in the United Kingdom to join their families here. This is the first group of people who were given visas to come over, and the families haven't got the accommodation to put them up. And they are therefore turning up homeless, and that impacts on councils and the service we deliver. And as a responsible council, we should do everything we can to meet that challenge. And I am very behind the government. They were slow off the mark, and the visa story you told it should not have happened, but it has happened and we're trying to catch up. But what the government have said is we are going to look at, and I hope they work it out, how do we link the people who've got families here who can't put them up with the thousands of generous people of this country who said they can come and stay at my house. It doesn't have to be a crisis that interrupts homelessness. We've got our own homeless people and we would like to give them all homes. And I think if the government can sort that out, that's something practical that we can do. And if they can't, then we as a council should be as generous as we possibly can to the people from Ukraine who end up in Swale. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yesterday, I had the privilege, I'm not sure that's the right word, of actually speaking to, via the International Trade Union Confederation, a Ukrainian lady in Germany. And she was saying the state of play at the moment is that she has no contacts with her family who are in Ukraine, her friends who are in Ukraine, her friends who are in Russia, her colleagues who are in Russia and the Ukraine. It is all falling into a black hole of utter silence, and people out there do not get what is going on. We are facing a crisis that is the makings of a man, a tyrant, a potential war criminal, of an illegal invasion into a country under the facade of a security exercise. No, for me, it's actually return to empire building of the used to be the USSR or the Russian Empire. It is our duty, I think, as individuals. It is our duty as a councillor to do what we can. We should do what we must do. And above all, we've got to do what is right for the people. Thank you.
Councillor Winklis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'm totally behind this amendment. I mean, every night on the news and the media, we see the plight of these Ukrainians fleeing from a dictator that has launched a war on these people, totally destructed the country, as has been touched on earlier tonight in this debate. This, I wasn't around, but I've read history. This reminds you of 1938 all over again, with what Hitler was up to. And in my book, Putin is another Hitler. And I don't think he's going to be stopped. He's probably stalling because he wants to build up his ammunitions again. And it's a terrible situation, and I'm totally behind this amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Winklis. As there's no more members wishing to speak, I would like to ask Councillor Dender, as the proposer of the original motion, whether he wishes to exercise his right to reply to the debate on the amendment.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll just have a few words. I guess, first of all, I thank Councillor Bowen. He brings into mind the Russian people. Our issue here is with Putin and his cronies, not specifically the Russian people. As Councillor Bowen says, they don't know what's going on in their own country. He's blocked the media completely, and they have no idea. And the families between the Ukrainians and the Russians are well known, that they have people on either side of the divide. A bit of history, for those who do know anything about Russian history. It's not communism, this. It's not even Putin, basically, although he is a tyrant and he is a dictator. This goes back hundreds of years. And what Putin is doing is exactly what the Russians have done for hundreds of years. They want their buffer zone back. There's no buffer between NATO and the Russians, and it's been their strategy for hundreds of years, including under the Tsars, to make sure they have a buffer between the West and themselves. And that's what this is. And we have to be very careful now to watch the Baltic states, to watch Bulgaria, to watch the Black Sea, because he will try and push it further forward. Picking up Councillor Baldock's point, NATO has to make a stand, But I think the no-fly zone, quite frankly, would make it far worse. It would, in fact, play into his hands. He would dearly love the excuse to be able to send more of his fighters in. So I think our best actions here are to keep supplying Ukrainian fighters and help them wherever we can with the weapons and the supplies that they need. I'm a little disappointed on some of the amendments, I have to say. There's repetition of what I'd already said. I won't pick out the points, I could, but I won't. And also, I think there is a bit of being overtaken by events. As I mentioned in my introduction, a lot of the points mentioned for the letter are already in progress by the government and various councils. So, you know, I'm a little disappointed that it was felt necessary, although I understand the spirit of the amendment, that it was necessary to make the amendments, quite frankly. However, there's
30 seconds remaining.
There's nothing in the amendments that I can disagree with specifically, so I'm happy to support the amendment. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Tindall. Right. I'm going to ask members to vote on the amendment by a show of hands. Those in favour, please raise your hands clearly. Thank you, members. That was the amendment. The amendment has been carried, so we will now continue the debate on the substantive motion as amended. I will now open up the debate to the other members. Excellent. We'll go straight to the vote. That's good news. Councillor Dender. Oh, sorry. We have one. Councillor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So I just wanted to make a couple of comments on the substantive motion.
Mr. Mayor, we had a proposal here to move to the vote. Point of order, sorry.
It was. David.
Mr. Mayor, it's David Clifford, the monitoring officer. If there is a seconder for the proposal to move to the vote, then you can take a vote on a show of hands on whether to move to the vote on the motion.
Second.
Okay. Okay. So we can go straight to the vote. Okay, members, we'll go straight to the vote.
No, make a vote on going to the vote.
Yes, that's what I meant. Yes. Okay. So all those in favour of going to the vote? That's carried. Those against? Yeah. So it's carried. We are going straight to the vote. Thank you. So all those in favour, please raise your hands. The motion is carried. Thank you. We're now going to adjourn for 10 minutes. Thank you.
Good team.
Yeah, because that is the agenda item could take 2 hours. It shouldn't. I hope not.
Members, can we turn to our seats, please? Thank you, members. We're going to re-adjourn now and move straight on to agenda item number 10, the committee system revised constitution parts 1 and 2. And I'd like to invite Councillor Baldock to introduce the report and propose the recommendations.
Hopefully you're all suitably refreshed after your break, ready for this exciting second part of the meeting. I noticed when Councillor Truelove referred to me earlier, he didn't refer to the work I'd done on heritage or trying to bring in some interesting new aspects to planning. No, it was the Constitution. Oh, what an exciting, glamorous job. But it is good. We are moving towards this new committee system. The working group has been meeting regularly. We've gone through things in excessive detail. Policies have it's moved in one direction, it's moved in another, as we've tried to take on board all the contributions that are being made. So I'd like to obviously propose this. There are a couple of things I'd like to say. Any constitution is a living document. It can be, as we've shown in the last 3 years, they can be amended, they can be tweaked, they can always be improved. Although we're voting on this tonight, at the next meeting, we will have the entire constitution before us to sign off. For when we move into the exciting new world. So we will be revisiting the whole thing again shortly. But I would like to say there are a couple of amendments to this document. I would like to suggest that this council asks the working group to look at. They are things that we've discussed, and I would have expected really that they'd have been picked up by now. But so the first one is in point 2.3.6.1. Tell I love this, can't you? There is no page number, I'm afraid. It just says service committees may set up subcommittees. We really need an addition there to say and/or working parties. If working parties appear in the following sections, I won't read them out, but they haven't actually been given the authority to set up. So we need that slight amendment. There's also, we could call them working groups, yep. Yeah, it's been pointed out actually working groups rather than working parties. And the second section, which you'll find under the delegations, and I'll read that out in a minute. It's under the delegations to the head of planning, section 2.8.15.2, subsections B and C. You're on familiar ground here, Councillor Clark. This is good stuff, isn't it? We are looking at making improvements to the way that the planning section interacts and the decision making, and this section will need further consideration. So I'm asking that you delegate this to the working group to look at in more detail and bring back some proposals to the next full council when we sign off on the entire constitution. But apart from that, it is long, but
Councillor Baldock, could you
wrap up?
No, there's not.
Just repeat the that paragraph.
2.8.15.2. It's on page 20. This one has got a number. I like saying 2. So with that, I hope you'll support what I've suggested and support the recommendation with those slight tweaks.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. I'd like to invite Councillor Roger Truelove to second and ask whether he wishes to speak now or reserve his rights.
Mr. Mayor, I'll speak now. This is part of the inevitable movement to the new utopia. We need to agree this to make those stepping stones. By all means, let's have another look at the working group, but I do ask you to adopt this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Truelove. I'd like to ask Councillor Horton, would you like to speak on the recommendations, please?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've been in the council now since 2015, and I have seen a lot of changes to our current constitution. I think it's 18 years old. It's probably 18 years out of date, and we have put off, it's been incrementally fiddled with for years, and we've put off rewriting it because we knew it was a mammoth task. So I congratulate the members of the Working Party who are now members of a working group and staff who have worked hard to make this document something that we can examine and approve today. In my experience, when you write a document that you live and breathe and it takes weeks of work, when you read it, you understand what you meant to say. When somebody else comes along who hasn't had that journey, they read it and say, what? I don't get that. It doesn't make any sense. And an obvious one for me, the deputy leader has pointed out, it went on to talk about working groups or parties, whichever it is, but it didn't actually give any committee the authority to create it. The test for me on a constitution is not do the people who wrote it understand it. It's does the person who picks it up and wants to know the answer to a question, can they find the answer and does the answer make sense? So on the understanding that this is going to be as dynamic a document as the last one has been for decades, and that it will be subject to change, and we have a mechanism in place to change it, I'm absolutely behind us having a working document on which we can go into what the leader has described as utopia after full annual council. I commend this document to you. I ask that to enable us to help the working party, stroke group and officers work out the constitution to the best of our abilities, the earlier you can get draft documents to us and we can feed back our thoughts through our members on that working party, the better we can collectively make this constitution, because it's got to work for all of us, because it's only when it works for all of us that does it enable us to serve the people who elected us to sit in this chamber. So I commend the document and I will be supporting it as it is written tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Horton. I'm going to open up the debate for members to speak on the recommendations, and we have Councillor Dendall, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It's a very simple point of clarification, actually. We're asked to adopt this document. Now, adopt to me means we're adopting a document that we're then setting almost in stone. But it's just been said that it's going to come back to us at the next meeting to adopt the whole constitution. So I'm a little puzzled what we're being asked to recommend. I would have expected this to note tonight and then come back to the next meeting. So it's just a question, really. Thank you.
Councillor Bonney, please.
Yes, sorry. I just wanted to check, and it could be me being completely scatty, but we've just changed that wording, which I'm happy with on the service committees. I just want to check on P&R. They might need a working group, whether that's in there. Is it covered under the definition of service committees, P&R? Because I think it's not, is it? Maybe David might like to answer that one.
I'm happy to come in through you, Mr. Mayor. The answer is yes, it is.
Right, okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Simmons, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I too was concerned when I read the recommendation that we would be adopting it rather than noting it. But I am reassured by Councillor Baldock that we will be coming back to consider the final version, as it were, at the next extraordinary council meeting. Members, I have to tell you that the last working group meeting took 3¼ hours on a Friday afternoon, which was quite grueling. And I'm not surprised with what Councillor Horton has said, that when you read something about 3 or 4 times, you think it's fine, and then someone else reads it and says, "Oh, you've just contradicted yourself there." I can tell Councillor Horton and other members that we have received today an email. Those members on the working group received an email today with I haven't counted the number of pages, but it's not 300 as with Levelling Up, but it is a considerable document on the procedures for meetings and how meetings are supposed to be conducted, and who speaks when and how they speak, and who makes a proposal and how many minutes they have to speak, and whether they've got a right of reply, and la-di-da-di-da. So we've got another 3 hours next Monday afternoon, and I think it's then another 3 hours on the Tuesday of the following week. So yeah, there's an awful lot of work in this. As if the Constitution's been in existence for 18 years, it needs an awful lot of tweaking and things. I mean, the thing is that a lot of the things have become common practice, and then when you go to write it down in a written constitution, perhaps that's why the United Kingdom doesn't have a written constitution. But when you write it down in a written constitution, people start saying, "Oh, you can't say that," and so it is very difficult. The Working Party are doing their best to produce a document which is accessible to everybody, and we will continue to do it up until the 18th of May. And one of the things we did decide at a previous meeting was that we would review it during the year, so we wouldn't sit on our laurels after May and leave it for a year. We would actually look at it as it goes along. So thank you very much, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. Councillor Henderson, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to be confusing, Councillor Baldock raised item 2.3.6.1. I would like, that was on at the bottom of a page. I'd like to point out that at the top of the next page is another item 2.3.6.1, which is the one I want to address. And that relates to the Housing and Health Committee having a subcommittee which will take into account the Swale Rainbow Homes shareholder representation. And I'd like to pick up 2 things about that. The first is, I don't think that's right. As I understand it, subcommittees can only have on them people who are on the main committee. But in this case, given that at present, 2 of the directors of the housing company are councillors Martin and Bonney, which would mean that they can't sit on the shareholder representatives. And what is more, as I understand it, at the earlier meeting when this was discussed, they were not able to contribute because we were being told that this was a financial interest. Now, I cannot see how it can possibly be a financial interest to be a director of a company which you don't get paid anything for. So I'd like to pick that up in order to hopefully in future open this discussion up a bit more, given that councillors Bonney and Martin probably know more about this than most. But I'd like in any case to suggest that a subcommittee is not the right structure and a working group would be a better structure.
30 seconds remaining.
Because there needs to be the flexibility of having people as shareholder representatives who are not necessarily on the Housing and Health Committee. So I'd like to propose that the working group looks at that. I'm not going to make a detailed proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Bowen, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I look forward to the evenings of the constant 2.3.6.1, 2.2.9.3.3, subsection B, appendix A, part 4. It's going to be fun. But just as a comment, it almost, I think, to a degree, a little bit of a pointless exercise. We agreed with all council some time ago that we were going to move into the committee structure. We need to have a new constitution to move to that new structure. So if we don't agree this tonight, we can't move to that new committee structure. But as a question, and it may be covered at the next council meeting, so I apologise if it will be, but just, I want to pose it because it relates to committees and the structure going forwards. I say if it's in the next one, that's great. But just for clarification, how can councillors who are not going to be part of a particular committee have the power to call in a decision of that committee, and where would that go? I would assume that it would be to full council, but how would that work? Because I can't see in here, and it may be in the next document, and if it is, great. If it's not, there should be something. Thank you.
Councillor Whiting, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And I again will be brief. I think I agree with Councillor Horton. This is in two parts in a way. Well, we have to get one part through tonight. This is a structure of what the new committee system will look like. The second part, which has been, I understand, delivered to the working group today, is the mechanics around how meetings like this are held, how decisions are made. And it may include the points, and I hope it does, that Councillor Bowen has raised. So I'll be supporting adopting this tonight and using the word adopt, and then we can move forward to the second part at our next meeting. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Davis, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a quick question. I like Councillor Henderson have seen a typo, and there's a few other things that I'd like addressed. Rather than debate them at council, who would be the best person to email these through to so the working group can pick up on this? Councillor Bourne, thank you very much.
Okay, as there's no more. Councillor Baldock, would you like to sum up on this, please?
Yeah, I guess I had. Okay, bearing in mind what has been said, I'd also ask that, with the indulgence of the council, that section 2.2.1.4, but also it would expressly give the Policy and Results Committee the ability to establish a working group as well as the other service committees. I think that would make sense. Yes, we'll have to renumber 2.3.6.1. We did discuss about the Rainbow Homes being a working group, but a working group can't make decisions, and the shareholder panel may well have to. It was the awkward one. It's the only one that we've really felt needed to be in the constitution, because we have to have some way of dealing with the shareholder representation in a proper structured way, and it will be politically balanced. We can have another look at that again. I'm not sure what other options there are. We did explore them. The question about call-ins, there isn't, of course, a scrutiny now, and I think the idea is that because all the committees will be politically balanced, you'll all have your input on the committees. But yeah, we will look. It'll be another couple of hours, Councillor Simmons. I'm sure we can fit it in. We can look at that sort of approach at the next working group. I'm not sure there will be an answer, but we will look at it and work out how best we can accommodate that. And I'm sure that the officers have heard that. I would like to take this opportunity to thank all the members of the working group who do sit through some fascinating and exhilarating discussions, and the officers who help us, because yeah, it can be a bit dry. Even I find it a bit tough at times. But thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Baldock. I'm now going to ask members to vote on the recommendations, and I'm going to ask all those in favour of the recommendations, please raise your hands. As amended. That is unanimous, and those recommendations are carried. And I'd just like to close the meeting and thank you very much, members and members of the public, for putting up with me.